My son's fiancée charged at us with a knife, and I blame him for it. He refused to see the monster I saw until she committed an act of shocking violence in my own backyard. Make sure you subscribe because her jealous rage was the key to exposing her twisted game. My name is Eleanor, and my garden has always been my sanctuary. It's a small patch of earth behind my cozy little house, but it's where I make sense of the world. My late husband used to say I could coax a confession out of a stubborn rosebush. My relationship with my son Alex was much the same, cultivated with love, patience, and plenty of sunshine. At 30, he was a fine young man, kind and ambitious, and the bond we shared was the pride of my life. He'd still call me every few days, not out of obligation, but just to talk. He'd been dating a new girl, Chloe, for about 6 months, and today was the day I was finally meeting her. I was nervous, the way any mother is. Alex had sounded so happy, so completely smitten. "You're gonna love her, Mom," he'd said, his voice buzzing with an energy I hadn't heard in years. When they arrived, my first impression was that she was perfect. Almost too perfect. She was beautiful, with bright, intelligent eyes and a smile that seemed to light up the room. She brought me a bouquet of my favorite flowers and complimented my home with a practiced, easy grace. We sat on the back patio surrounded by my blooming garden, and she laughed at all of Alex's old stories. But as the afternoon wore on, I started to notice things. Small, almost imperceptible details. The way her hand would tighten on Alex's arm whenever he and I would share a private laugh over a shared memory. The way her smile would become a fraction of a second too fixed, her eyes a little too watchful when I asked him a simple question about his work. It was a flicker of something possessive, a shadow that passed so quickly I almost convinced myself I had imagined it. The moment that truly unsettled me came as they were leaving. I gave Alex a big hug, as I always have. "I love you, kiddo," I whispered. Over his shoulder, I saw Chloe watching us. Her perfect smile was gone. In its place was an expression of cold, hard assessment, an almost analytical look, as if she were measuring a threat. The moment Alex pulled away from me and took her hand, the sunny smile was back, as if it had never left. It was a chillingly quick transformation. Later that evening, Alex called, bubbling with excitement. "So, what did you think? Isn't she amazing?" I hesitated, choosing my words with the care of a gardener planting a delicate seed. I said, "She's lovely, honey. Really. She's just very devoted to you." He laughed, a happy, carefree sound. "That's what love is, Mom. She's all in. We both are." "Oh, Mom," he said, his voice filled with loving exasperation. "You worry too much. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me. I've got this." I let it go. I told myself I was being a foolish, overprotective mother, seeing shadows where there was only the bright, intense sun of a new love. I didn't yet know that the small shadow I had noticed was not in my imagination. It was real. And it was about to grow into a suffocating darkness that would threaten to tear our family apart. 2 months later, Alex announced their engagement. He called me, his voice brimming with a joy so pure it momentarily erased all my doubts. I was genuinely happy for him, for them. I pushed my unease aside, telling myself that every mother has to learn to let go. When Chloe called me a week later, her voice sparkling with excitement, and invited me to go wedding dress shopping with her and her own mother, I felt a wave of relief. This, I thought, was her extending an olive branch. This was a chance for us to connect, woman to woman. The bridal boutique was a sea of white and ivory, a place of hushed whispers and hopeful dreams. Chloe's mother, a woman as polished and serene as Chloe herself, greeted me with a polite, if distant smile. The day started well enough. We drank champagne, and Chloe tried on a series of breathtaking gowns, looking like a princess in every one. The subtle shift began when I offered my first real opinion. Chloe was trying on a beautiful, timeless gown with delicate lace sleeves. It reminded me of my own wedding dress. "Oh, honey," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "That one is just classic. It's perfect." Chloe looked at herself in the mirror, then met my eyes in the reflection. "It is beautiful, Eleanor," she said, her voice sweet as honey. "So traditional. I think I'm looking for something a bit more modern." She said the word traditional as if it were a synonym for dated or irrelevant. From that moment on, I was gently but firmly excluded. If I admired a dress with a flowing skirt, Chloe would immediately ask the consultant for something with a sharper silhouette. When I pointed out the beauty of some pearl detailing, Chloe would turn to her own mother and say, "What do you think, Mom? Is it too fussy?" My opinion was no longer just ignored, it was used as a compass to steer in the opposite direction. She ended up choosing a stark, minimalist gown that was the very antithesis of everything I had praised. Then she turned to me with that perfect, concerned smile and said, "I do hope you're not disappointed, Eleanor. I just want it to feel like me." It was a masterclass in manipulation, making my feelings the problem. That evening, I called Alex, hoping to gently share how I'd felt. Before I could even finish my first sentence, he sighed. "Mom, Chloe told me you were a little quiet today. She was so worried she'd offended you." I was stunned. She had already spun the narrative. "It wasn't that, Alex," I tried to explain. "It's just I felt like my opinion didn't matter, like she was deliberately choosing the opposite of whatever I liked." His response was swift and defensive. "Seriously, Mom? She's planning a wedding, the biggest day of her life. She's under a huge amount of stress, and she made an effort to include you. Can't you just be supportive? Please don't make this difficult for her." He wasn't listening. He didn't hear the hurt in my voice. He only heard a complaint that threatened the perfect piece of his new life. Every attempt I made to connect was being twisted into an accusation. My son had chosen his side, and I was beginning to realize that this wasn't just wedding stress. This was a game, and I was the target. But I had no idea just how dangerous this game was about to become. The week before the wedding was a masterclass in polite exclusion. My role, I learned, was to be a smiling, silent figurehead, a decorative piece of family history. Chloe had taken over everything with the ruthless efficiency of a corporate CEO. Every decision, from the flower arrangements to the seating chart, was made without my input. Alex, when I could get him on the phone, sounded distant and exhausted, a passenger in the runaway train of his own wedding. I retreated into my garden, my sanctuary, feeling the distance between my son and me grow with each passing day. Then, on a warm Tuesday afternoon, just 4 days before the ceremony, his car pulled into my driveway. It wasn't a planned visit. He looked tired. His tie loosened, his suit jacket slung over his shoulder. He hadn't called, he just showed up, like he used to. "Hey, Mom, got a minute?" "For you, honey, I have all the minutes in the world," I said, my heart aching with a love so fierce it almost hurt. We sat on the back patio, the air thick with the scent of honeysuckle. He pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket and smoothed it out on the table. "It's my vows," he said, looking utterly defeated. I've been trying to write them for a week, and it's just garbage. It all sounds so generic, like something from a bad romantic comedy. He read a line aloud. Chloe, you are the sun in my sky, the stars in my night. Ugh, he groaned and buried his face in his hands. Who even is that? It's not me. I didn't offer advice. I didn't say a word about Chloe or the wedding. I just got up, went inside, and came back with a heavy leather-bound photo album. His baby book. I opened it to a picture of him when he was 7. He was on a fishing trip with his late grandfather, proudly holding up a tiny, glistening fish, a look of pure, unadulterated joy on his face. I remember that day, I said softly. You were so determined to catch a bigger fish than Grandpa. You sat on that dock for 4 hours without a single bite, refusing to give up. When you finally caught that little sunfish, you treated it like you'd won the lottery. You didn't care that it was small. You were just so proud that you'd done it yourself. He looked at the picture, a slow smile spreading across his tired face. I had forgotten about that. We spent the next hour like that, flipping through the pages of their childhood, of our shared history. We laughed at the photo of him in a terrible homemade Halloween costume. I reminded him of the time he tried to build a tree house and ended up with more nails in the wrong places than the right ones. It was easy. It was us. The tension melted from his shoulders. He was no longer the stressed-out groom. He was just Alex, my son. After a while, he picked up his pen. Okay, he said, a new light in his eyes. I think I know what to say now. He was just finishing a sentence. A genuine, happy laugh bubbling up from his chest, and I felt a wave of pure, uncomplicated joy. The world, for a moment, felt right again. The warm sun was on our faces. The scent of honeysuckle was in the air, and my son was here, with me, his true self. The sliding glass door to my kitchen opened with a soft, almost silent squeak. We both turned, startled by the unexpected sound, and there, standing in the doorway, was Chloe. I had no idea she was here. We hadn't heard a car, hadn't heard the front door. She must have slipped in, a silent wraith of fury. Her face was pale, her perfectly styled hair disheveled, and her eyes, usually so cold and controlled, were wide with a wild, frantic rage. But it wasn't her expression that made the breath catch in my throat. It was what she was holding in her hand. My large, sharp gardening knife, the one I used for pruning the thickest rose stems, the one I had left on the kitchen counter just an hour ago. Time didn't just slow down, it shattered into a million tiny, sharp fragments. The sound of the buzzing bees in the garden faded into a high-pitched whine in my ears. I felt the warmth of the sun on my skin turn to ice. My entire body went rigid, a primal, animalistic freeze. My gaze was locked on the knife, on the way the afternoon sun glinted off its polished steel blade. It looked impossibly large, impossibly sharp in her delicate hand. I saw Alex move beside me. It was a small, almost imperceptible shift, but I knew what it was. He moved his chair back slightly, positioning himself a few crucial inches in front of me, a son's instinct to protect his mother. His face had gone completely white, all the color drained from it, leaving only a mask of stark, absolute terror. His mouth was slightly open, as if he wanted to scream her name, but no sound came out. She didn't speak. She just walked out onto the patio, her steps slow and deliberate, the knife held tightly at her side. Every step she took on the stone patio sounded like a drumbeat, a countdown to some unspeakable horror. My mind, in its panic, was a chaotic storm. This can't be real. This is my garden. This is my son's fiancé. People don't just show up with knives. I thought of every horror movie I'd ever accidentally seen, every news report about a love triangle gone wrong. Was this it? Was this how my story, my son's story, was going to end? In a quiet suburban garden on a sunny Tuesday afternoon? She walked right past our table, so close I could have reached out and touched her. Her eyes were burning with a terrifying, unseeing fury, looking through us as if we were already ghosts. I thought she was going to turn to raise the knife. I braced myself for the impact, for the pain. But she didn't turn. She walked directly to my prize-winning rose bushes, the ones my late husband and I had planted together on our 10th anniversary. And then she began to attack them. It was an act of brutal, calculated violence. She hacked at the thick, woody stems, the knife flashing in the afternoon sun. She tore through the delicate blossoms, red and white petals raining down on the grass like bloody confetti. She was screaming now, a raw, guttural sound of pure rage and pain. "I'm sick of this," she shrieked, slicing through another branch. "I'm sick of competing with your perfect memories. I'm sick of this stupid, perfect garden." The blade flashed in the sun, destroying the beauty I had spent years cultivating. In that moment, I saw my son's face. The defensiveness was gone. The annoyance was gone. All that was left was a look of absolute, dawning horror. He was finally seeing the monster I had tried to warn him about, but it felt like it was too late. The question was no longer if their wedding would happen, but if my son and I could ever heal from the wound he had allowed to be inflicted. The sound of Chloe's ragged sobs was the only thing that broke the terrible silence in my ruined garden. She had collapsed onto the grass amidst the carnage of petals and thorns, the knife lying forgotten beside her, like a discarded snakeskin. Alex just stood there, pale and shaking, his body still rigid from the adrenaline and terror of the last few minutes. He stared at the destruction, not just of my roses, but of the entire reality he had so carefully constructed for himself. He looked from the mangled bushes to the weeping woman on the ground, and then finally to me. In his eyes, I saw the horrifying clarity of a man waking up from a long, beautiful dream into a cold, ugly reality. He walked over to Chloe, his movements stiff, robotic. He didn't bend down to comfort her. He just stood over her, a shadow against the setting sun. "Get up, Chloe," he said, his voice devoid of any emotion. It was colder and flatter than I had ever heard it. "Alex, I didn't mean to," she stammered through her tears, looking up at him, her face a mess of mascara and desperation. "You didn't mean to what?" he asked, his voice still terrifyingly calm. "Didn't mean to sneak into my mother's house? Didn't mean to grab a knife? Didn't you mean for us to think you were about to—" He couldn't even finish the sentence. He shook his head, a look of profound disgust on his face. "Or didn't you mean for me to finally see who you really are?" He pointed toward the gate. "Get in your car and go. We're done." She stared at him, her mouth opening and closing, but no words came out. The tears, the hysterics, they had no effect on him anymore. The spell was broken. After a long, agonizing moment, she scrambled to her feet and fled, her sobs trailing behind her until the sound of her car speeding away left us in an even deeper silence. Alex and I stood there for a long time, two statues in a field of wreckage. He wouldn't look at me. He just stared at the broken stems of the peace rose his father and I had planted on our 10th anniversary. His hands were still trembling. "You tried to tell me," he finally whispered, his voice hoarse. "Right from the beginning. You saw it." I didn't say, "I told you so." The victory, if you could call it that, felt too much like a funeral. I just nodded, my own heart aching for the pain and terror etched on his face. He had been in danger too. We both had. He finally turned to me, and his eyes were filled with a shame so profound it was almost unbearable to witness. "It's my fault, Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "All of this, I didn't listen. I didn't want to see it because I wanted so badly for it to be perfect. I let her do this. I let her hurt you." He took a step toward me, his hand reaching out and then falling back to his side as if he didn't feel he had the right to touch me. "I let her scare you. I'm so sorry." The apology was spoken, laid bare between us amidst the ruins of my garden. But the trampled petals and severed branches were a silent, brutal testament to the damage that had been done. Can a single "I'm sorry" erase months of willful blindness and the terror of a flashing knife? In that moment, standing in the wreckage of our past, we both had to find the answer to that question. The days that followed were quiet and heavy. The wedding was, of course, called off. There were logistical calls to make, deposits to be forfeited, and disappointed family members to inform. Alex handled it all with a grim, quiet efficiency. He was staying with me for a little while, sleeping in his childhood bedroom, but he was distant, lost in his own storm of shame and self-recrimination. He had seen a therapist a few times, trying to understand how he had allowed himself to be so completely blinded. I didn't push. I just made him coffee in the morning and soup in the evening, giving him the one thing he needed most: a safe, silent harbor. The garden, our beautiful, wounded garden, laid dormant under a blanket of early winter frost. And so did our relationship. Healing, I knew, took time. Months passed. Winter came and went, covering the scarred earth with a clean, white sheet of snow. And then spring arrived. The first crocuses pushed their way through the thawing ground, and with them, a fragile sense of hope. One bright Saturday morning in April, Alex showed up at my door. He looked different, calmer, clearer. The frantic, haunted look in his eyes was gone, replaced by a quiet, steady resolve. In his hands, he was holding a large, flat box from the best nursery in the state. He didn't say much. He just followed me out to the back patio and set the box down. I opened it. Inside, nestled in damp soil, were a dozen new rose seedlings. They were rare, beautiful varieties, each tag bearing a name: Remembrance, Hope, New Dawn. He said, "I thought we could start over." It was more than an apology. It was a promise. We spent the entire day together in the garden, working side by side. We didn't talk much about what had happened. We didn't need to. Our conversation was in the shared work, in the way he dug the holes with his strong back, the way I gently settled the new roots into the earth, the easy rhythm of our movements. We were not just replanting a garden. We were mending the broken pieces of our family, our trust, our love. As the sun began to set, Casting long, warm shadows across the newly planted rose beds, we stood back to admire our work. The garden was still scarred, but it was no longer a place of trauma. It was a place of new beginnings. Alex put his arm around my shoulder. He said, "I love you, Mom." And this time, his voice was clear and true. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see." I leaned my head against his shoulder, breathing in the scent of fresh earth and new hope. I said, "I love you too, honey. Welcome home." Thank you for joining me today. Thumbs up always brightens my day, and I'd be honored if you'd subscribe.